Last Night in Soho, which is the Edgar Wright film, him dipping his toe into horror. I mean, he did that with Shaun of the Dead, but that was a little bit more of a comedic kind of horror.
Shaun of the Dead and kind of the entire the Cornetto trilogy. They're pretty much horror spoofs. They're spoofs on genres, but they also function within that genre. Like Shaun of the Dead, it's a horror comedy, but it both works as a horror film and as a comedy. Like a Hot Fuzz, it's a great cop film, and it's also a great parody. And The World's End, which is my personal favorite of the three movies, it's a sci-fi film. It's a sci-fi film, but it also works as a parody.
Yeah. Like Nick said, I mean, he's got a great resume of stuff. Edgar Wright from Hot Fuzz, from Shaun of the Dead, The World's End, Scott Pilgrim, Baby Driver. Wasn't that huge on Baby Driver myself, but I still thought it was solid. The World's End, I think, is maybe my least favorite of the trilogy, of the Cornetto trilogy. Out of all the ones that he did, I think that one's my least favorite. But, Edgar Wright's got a great track record when it comes to films. And is this film, kind of another notch in his belt as far as his great directing career. So we'll tell you all about it. So here in Last Night in Soho, starring Thomasin McKenzie, who plays Ellie. She's a kind of, for lack of a better word, she's a country bumpkin. In this kind of. In this film, she wants to go to London to this fashion school. She makes her own dresses, and her grandmother's trying to tell her that hey, it's a big city. They're gonna eat you alive out there, and you coming in here, and doing kind of your own little dresses. Like it's rough, and she's like, no, I got it, I can handle it, and she gets there, and immediately already has a bad time. And she goes there to this big London fashion school, already moves into it with a roommate that sucks, is mean to her, dealing with this kind of college environment that you kind of experience, trying to fit in, be this kind of outsider. She's, kind of in the situation of being like this outsider, amongst these people. So, a lot of it's kind of her dealing with that, going to this fashion school, as well as the core of this film being a whodunit, where she's kind of living through this life of this other person from the past in the 60s, played by Anna Taylor-Joy, who's called Sandy in the film, who, is this, aspiring, singer, and she wants to be kind of famous and, and live this kind of big lifestyle. So she's kind of living this, life, through this moment of Anna Taylor-Joy. So it's very interesting. And at the core of this movie, it's really a whodunit, this kind of murder mystery kind of element of, Ellie's character trying to figure out, what happened to the Anna Taylor-Joy character, Sandy. So I think, with this film, I think it's, great performances all around, especially Thomasin McKenzie, who plays Ellie. People have seen her. She was in Jojo Rabbit. She was the Jewish girl in the attic. That wasn't Anne Frank. She was somebody else. So she was in that. She was also, I think I've seen her in something else. I can't pin my finger, but that was kind of the main thing I first.
The most recent thing she was in was Old, the M. Night Shyamalan.
Yes. I forgot she was kind of in that. Yeah, she was also in Old as well. And she's got kind of, great kind of look too for horror. It's like Victoria Pedretti when I said about her when she was in The Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor, because she's got that perfect face for horror, because she's kind of got, kind of the big eyes, and she's kind of got that great look about her. So it works very well here for the Thomasin.
Yeah, she's kind of got those like Powerpuff Girl eyes.
Very much so, and so I think she works very well, and she also has like this voice too, that's this kind of very soft kind of voice that works really well, that perfectly fits kind of with her character, playing this meek girl coming from the country to this big city, and trying to figure things out, and kind of being so overwhelmed by things and people. So I thought that fit perfectly. And then Anna Taylor-Joy, she's amazing. She's having a great hot streak. I mean, she's we talked about her last stream when we did the Dune review, when we mentioned Zendaya. She's like she's part of that crop of these really big up and coming young actresses coming up, and her whole kind of look, being the person that's in the 60s, and her look is absolutely great, fitting that really look and mold of there, and and I'm glad that they play off each other really well. You know, you see kind of the Ellie character morphing more into the Anna Taylor-Joy character, gaining more confidence by, you know, vicariously living through her and her life, and that was very nice. And then also, I didn't know Anna Taylor-Joy could also sing. She also sings in this movie as well. Like, she does her own rendition of Downtown, which I thought was very
great. As if I needed another reason to fall in love.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know, so she's incredibly talented all the way up and down. So I'll let you guys get in this discussion. Dusk and Chris, I'll let Chris go first. What were kind of your guys' initial thoughts about this film?
My initial thoughts were that this was probably, like, dating back to when the trailer came out. I was like, this is probably the movie I'm most looking forward to for the rest of the year. Yeah, there's the Marvel stuff that I'm interested in, and yeah, some of the blockbuster stuff, but like that's the one I'm interested in. And you know that feeling you get when like you're really looking forward to getting something on like Christmas or whatever, and then you get it and it's either like not what you wanted it to be, so you're kind of disappointed, or it's not quite there, but you're just so happy to finally have it that you're like, okay, I'll take it. That is not what happened here. This movie is fucking awesome.
Oh, you had me there for a second.
Oh, did I? Nice.
You had me in the first half, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I really dug the hell out of this. Yeah, you're right. Thomasin McKenzie, yeah, she's really improving herself these last few years to be like one of the like top tier actresses within her age group. And like you said, not only does she have a great look for horror, but I think her ultimate skill as an actor is this sense of like soulfulness and vulnerability that she brings to every one of her characters that gets you to like immediately sympathize with her and like even get protective of her. Like from the very first scene, it's like,
very
I like
early
this
on.
girl. I like this girl. I'm rooting for her. I want her to get out of this alive and in one piece. And you experience everything through her eyes, and yeah, you're with her every step of the way. And Anya Taylor-Joy, yeah, like when we see her, like she feels like she belongs right in the 60s. She's got this like charisma and this confidence that she carries herself with that makes her really appealing. And you can see why Thompson's character Ellie would be interested in her. And Matt Smith, who's like her manager, Sandy's manager / boyfriend, who promises like, yeah, he's gonna like get her to the top, but he's also got sinister motivations. Yeah, he's really good too. And
I mean, he's a man in the 60s, so of course.
Yeah, exactly.
And have you seen any
movie.
music? And have you seen any music biopic ever? No manager is actually a good dude.
Yeah, never trust managers. And that speaks to something else that really impressed me about this movie is that it's Edgar Wright. This is probably like his most heavy and mature movie to date. He's dealing with really like difficult subject matter involving misogyny and the exploitation of women in the 60s especially, and this idea that yeah, this golden age that you think is so amazing from a distance, like the closer you get a look at it, the more you realize like yeah, this period that you idolize so much is not as great as you think it is, and we barely progressed from that today. This movie goes out of its way to show you that. And I love how Edgar Wright uses this opportunity to stretch himself as a filmmaker. Like, it's his most serious movie to date, and he slowed his style down way down. Like he's known in a lot of his movies for like his hyper fast editing. And even though he still shoots it the way he shoots a lot of those like hyper scenes in his other movies, the editing and the pacing is a lot slower and more reserved, but that works for the movie. And stuff that he used to do in his comedies to get you to laugh, instead here he uses it to build up a sense of dread and foreboding, and that works really well. And yeah, this is him flexing a whole new set of filmmaking muscles and genre muscles, and I thought he knocked it out of the park.
Okay. Dusk?
Damn, Chris, you might as well just do my job for me. In all seriousness, I do agree quite a lot in what Chris has stated. What I will add though is, well, I do agree a lot of what he states. I think this is also his one of his more rough ones as well. I think a lot of he stretches himself a lot in this movie. You're right. Just from the get-go, you can tell this movie's going to be different from most Edgar Wright, just from the way it starts, right from the mystery and the supernatural things that kind of enter into it. And I won't go into details there, but there is a bit of supernatural in this movie. And right from the get-go, yes, Thomasin McKenzie is really good as Ellie. Right from the moment she gets to London, you're just as much in attention with her. You get very up close. You kind of understand her character. You understand her dreams, and right from the beginning, you're like, "Oh, girl, you're in a position. You're like a babe in the woods, and there's a bunch of wolves. So you need to really be careful here." But she's spunky, and she's gonna kind of go through it. And yeah, when she starts, when she meets up with the Sandy, played by Anya Taylor-Joy. Anya, she does such a great job just playing in the 60s, and that's also a keen area for where Edgar Wright excels. He's really good at just kind of the distance between these two genres, where normally that'd be such a thin line to kind of carry yourself through. He does very masterfully, and I think that's a benefit because of his previous career. I know you didn't quite enjoy it as much, but I really did dig Baby Driver, and I think he does benefit from a lot of those aspects where he goes from a very musical scene, goes from a very musical moment, and then, all right, now we're curving to a different angle. We're curving to a different point of view. This glitz and glamour isn't what you think it is. You think you're seeing what you're seeing, but that's not what it really is. And I think that he does it very masterfully. Where he gets a little trippy is unfortunate in those moments, because he does feel like this is kind of his first foray, really kind of stretching in a genre that he's not kind of used to. He makes a little simple mistakes, such as tone. Tone sometimes can kind of be a little bit stretched. It doesn't quite gel as evenly as you want it. But when the tension gets set, and then the characters, and he slows the editing down, and he lets you really breathe in those moments, he does have a good, like he always has, he has a good understanding of the nature of just let the moment sit and let the audience, something I think a lot of most common horror movies, even like James Wan movies, don't do. Tension is built by not knowing what's going to happen in this moment, how this is going to go. And I think he excels in those moments. And those in-between moments and those little moments, I think that's where he excels the most. When he tries to kind of it's almost like a reflex. He tries to get back into Edgar Wright mode. That's where the movie kind of, it's like, nah, you're stretching it a bit. You're fine. It's like I almost want somebody to just pat him on the back. He's like, no, you're good. Keep going. You're doing okay. But for the most part, I enjoyed my time in this movie. This is pretty nice.
Okay. Yeah, it's bringing up Baby Driver. It actually brings over some elements from that because like she's listening to headphones, and you hear it when she's on the headphones, and then when she takes off the headphones, you hear that sound when you kind of like the moment when you kind of take off headphones and put them down, and you also still kind of hear the music playing slightly, like when the music's still coming from the headphones. In scenes and things like that. So it kind of brings over that kind of element from Baby Driver. I thought that was kind of nice because that was a big thing with the Baby Driver character is that, he, always wore headphones and always would take one out and everything like that. It really, did a lot of stuff with sound. Also here, kind of some of the weaker elements for me, when she goes kind of to London, and when she meets kind of goes there and kind of meets her roommate. Her roommate is typical bitchy mean girl type girl. Her roommate is
She's pretty one note.
Her name is Jocasta. And then every time you see her, she's always with her other bitchy friends. You know what I mean? Always hanging out, and it's just these are kind of adults by this point somewhat. It's like, okay, maybe you would talk shit about them maybe at some point on her, and they make fun of her for her having this homemade outfit and everything. But it's just like constantly throughout the movie, it seems like the girl has a super obsession with her, and I'm just like, okay, this seems a little much, constantly with her. And I just feel like maybe you could reduce the stuff with her, and then her and her, her crew and her cronies and things like that. I was just like, you could reduce some of this stuff there with kind of them. Another kind of element here is that, when I watched the trailer for it, I thought it was kind of going to be somewhat kind of like Midnight in Paris. And if you ever seen Midnight in Paris, the premise of that, where it's kind of like Owen Wilson kind of gets, he's able to be teleported to 1920s in France. And he kind of gets to meet all these famous historian authors, like Ernest Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's a Woody Allen film. I think it's an amazing film.
One of his best.
Yeah, really, really great film. So it's not like that sort of here. And I'm saying that because it's like the character of Ellie kind of has sort of an ability, to say. And they open the movie where, saying that she can communicate, because she can communicate with like her dead mother. Film opens like that. So she sort of has that kind of ability, but then in terms of how they use that and incorporate that, especially when it gets towards the latter part of the movie and towards the ending and the conclusion, because like I said, at the core of this movie, it's a whodunit. I just didn't really kind of understand how that all fit. And then, when it kind of gets towards the end and, kind of them, trying to wrap up this mystery. And a lot of like when it's a mystery, kind of murder mystery type thing, a lot of it depends somewhat on the ending of like how you're going to close this out and how you're going to make it, really sell and really punch to the audience. And I just was kind of left a little kind of confused there with kind of the ending and what they did there. And, like you said, I mean, a lot of stuff, like you said, when Chris mentioned, like, Edgar Wright, when he does with this film, it's, very mature film for him. Because, like I said, he's mostly done comedy stuff. He's mostly done stuff like Scott Pilgrim and, Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, The World's End. They've all been comedy films. And with this one, like you said, it's touching on very much of misogyny, very much of women's issues. A lot of kind of very serious kind of topics of that stuff. And I didn't, really expect that coming into it. And I thought that was very nice. And I thought that was a great addition. So do you see what I'm kind of saying about kind of the ending and towards the latter part? Like, how did that kind of all, like, when it came to that conclusion, and we're going to be getting into spoilers in a little bit when we give more about our thoughts, and then we're going to give our reviews. But what did you kind of guys think about the ending without giving away too much? Chris, go ahead.
What I thought about the ending is, it's funny, I didn't read too closely into reviews before the movie came out because I wanted to avoid spoilers as much as I could. But I did notice a lot of people complaining about the ending of like, oh, this doesn't make sense, or, oh, this is so far-fetched or whatever. And it's like, so I watched the ending and I was like, yeah, it's kind of out there, but it tracks for me given certain characters' motivations and setups that were planted early enough on that like I could kind of like connect the dots, and it's like, okay, it's kind of weird, and there's one big question that I have regarding a certain reveal, but we'll save that for later. But overall, like, it tracks for me. Like, it makes sense to me, and it ties into the bigger themes of the movie, and it's funny, it actually plays host to a scene where I thought they were going to screw the whole like thing about dealing with misogyny and abuse of women, where I thought they were going to do something that was going to undercut all that. It's like, no, please don't. Thankfully, they don't. And I'll get more specific about that when we get to spoilers.
Okay. Dusk?
As much fun as I did have this movie, and I did have a lot of fun, I do admit that the story and theme starts to get a little wobbly as we pass the halfway point. We start going, okay, this is starting to accelerate, starting to get a little bit more desperate here. Where are we going with this? That's the question I was unfortunately starting to think more and more of as we kept going. Where are we going with this? And by the time it does get to that ending, I end up going with more questions than I do presentable answers. It doesn't necessarily take away from the really good half that we had beforehand and some really great music and casting, but it does unfortunately leave me going like with okay, like, which is like, all right, man. But that being said, I would have liked a lot more, especially when you do a horror type movie like this, or you're trying to get a little bit more closer, especially with the themes that you want. You want an iron tight, especially if you're doing mysteries. Mysteries are, like you said, they're kind of ironed out on how you end them. How you end something can change the entire aspect of a movie beforehand. And I feel like the way they got to that ending almost doesn't fit with the rest of the tone and what was presented beforehand. And so it's almost like there's a slight dissidence between what I was expecting and what ended up happening.
Yeah.
And it kind of took me out a bit.
Yeah.
That's at least what I feel on that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Without getting into spoilers.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about it more. To give more kind of my other thoughts in the movie, there's also another character, John, who's kind of Ellie's fellow student at the fashion school. She's
The only nice person in London.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, he's the only one decent person that's actually treating her nice. You know what I mean? Actually respectful to her. Friendly. You know what I mean? All the other people absolutely just ridiculing her for everything, the way she dresses, the music she listens to. And also great soundtrack, by the way. I like the '60s music. Do I wish I lived back in the '60s? No, I do not. I like the music though. Good music. Good music though, and it's funny because Ellie's character, she gets in this movie she gets a rude awakening because she's all about I love the '60s. Oh God, it would have been back then. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, you love the '60s, all right, yeah.
Yeah, you say that now.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna show you some '60s.
And the entire decade just said, and I took that personally.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Yeah, the entire decade was like, oh yeah, okay, we're gonna show you some '60s, all right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh, bet.
But I mean, great soundtrack. Yeah, and his character. It's by actor named Michael Ajo. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Ijo, and then so he plays John, who's like her fellow kind of classmate at the fashion school, and he's pretty good. They have some good moments together, and they got good chemistry together. I thought that was fun, and him just kind of just being a cool guy and friendly guy. I thought that was kind of much needed. And the fashion of the movie also really great. Like I said, Anna Taylor-Joy looks amazing, and kind of her outfits, her clothes, what she's wearing, she looks absolutely great.
That pink dress is already iconic.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. I mean, that's a great look. When she had I love the look when she had the white boots and the white jacket on. I thought that looked really awesome. Kind of like they call it the mod fashion of the '60s, and that was happening in London. So that kind of whole look that she had on, that was kind of really awesome. She had. I mean, they do a lot of great stuff with the kind of like Edgar Wright does with the aesthetic of the '60s when they go and do those scenes, and the transitions to those scenes are also really great. Like when you first see when she goes into the world in the past of the '60s, which this is set kind of in 1965 when they show the past of the '60s, because you see the Thunderball poster there, which is the James Bond movie with Sean Connery. So it's 1965 to place it into a time, and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of really cool, and Edgar Wright really nailed that very well, and I thought that was pretty good. And so, I thought all that stuff was a lot of fun to watch. And then Matt Smith also, who, people know he's the Doctor from Doctor Who. He's also very great, and, also has great swagger here. Looks like he also belongs in the '60s as well. And then
Don't forget the great Diana Rigg, who plays the landlady, who we unfortunately lost recently.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Miss Elena Tyrell, Queen of Thorns herself.
Yeah, that, and a lot of you will also know her as James Bond's wife from On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Mm-hmm. Yep. She was also in The Avengers, which took place during 1965.
The TV show, not the Marvel movie.
Yes, the TV show. So.
Yeah. She was the Elena Tyrell from the Game of Thrones. She was always the one with the best comebacks of the whole show. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That would just leave people absolutely stunned in Game of Thrones. Like people just like,
Queen of Thorns, more like the Queen of Sass.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? Like people just never know how to respond. They were just like, I kind of don't know what to say. Like I didn't expect you to say that. I kind of don't know. I'm expecting older people to be friendly, and then you're actually just fucking just mean. So she's also in this. You also have also a veteran actor from also the '60s. Terrence Stamp, General Zod himself is in this. So he's also in this as well. So you have kind of them bringing those '60s actors as well into this film. I thought was also a very nice addition. So to give my overall thoughts, and I'm going to kick it to Dusk and Chris to sum up their thoughts and give their reviews after I give my sum up here. I think this is a very good film. I do think it's very good. I still I think towards past the halfway point when it kind of gets towards the conclusion and wrapping things up, I think that was kind of a fumble there, honestly. And when it comes to the conclusion and everything, I was just kind of like, maybe you guys can, maybe we can work it out in the spoiler talk and everything like that. And as far as because I was just confused on some things, maybe I'll just change my rating. But just kind of with that, I was like, this is kind of weak for me. like I said, I mentioned the element with the kind of the mean bitchy girls that didn't really need to be there. I thought that was kind of like maybe a couple scenes, but just like throughout the movie, I was like, this seems kind of unnecessary. But other than that, I was just kind of like, hey, great performances, great look, great soundtrack. Loved Anna Taylor Joy's performance, loved Thomasin McKenzie's performance a lot. How they kind of directly oppose each other, like her being this, Thomas McKenzie being this meek kind of girl, and then Anya Taylor-Joy being this super confident, super kind of just, star in a way of her. I thought that was kind of like how they, opposed those things, and the different shots in the movie were also very great, and the look of it also was very lovely as well. So for me, I would give it as of right now, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. What about you, Chris? What about you?
What I would give it is that, I do have a couple problems with it. During the third act, scares involving the ghosts, they start to get a little bit repetitive. It's kind of the same scene over and over again of, like, Ellie goes somewhere, she's doing something, ghost shows up out of nowhere, and then she screams and runs away. It feels like it's a little wheel spinny there, but thankfully it doesn't last too long. And some of the side characters are pretty one note, especially the mean girl. And even her friend John, even though I did like the character, it was mostly because I think the actor does a really good job. And it's funny, I spent the whole movie looking at him like, this guy feels familiar. Who is he? And I looked him up afterwards. He was in Attack the Block. He was one of the little, like, 10-year-old kids who was trying to fuck with the aliens. Yeah, which Edgar Wright...
what?
Yeah, that's him. He's Mayhem. And I remember... Yeah, I remember this because every time somebody mentions Attack the Block, I always flash back to a scene where him and his buddy are looking at an alien, like, and he's starting to get scared, like, oh, I don't know. And his buddy looks at him like, nobody is ever going to call you Mayhem if you keep being a fucking pussy, okay?
Oh, God, that movie's so fucking good.
Yeah, it's a classic. Produced by Edgar Wright. He didn't write or direct it, but he did.
That is produced by Edgar Wright. It's one of his unsung movies.
Yeah, and that was probably what led to him being here. And I loved the aesthetic of this. It's beautifully shot by a great South Korean cinematographer, Chung Hoon Chung, who shot Old Boy and The Handmaiden for Park Chan-wook, and also shot the first It. I love the story. I love the themes that it deals with. The performances are incredible. I can't say enough positive things about Thomasin McKenzie. It's funny because I've come on here to review 2 movies with you guys. One was this movie, and the other was with Old, which he was also in. And usually, like, I go to see movies, like, sometime in the middle of the week after they've come out because, with COVID, you want to go when there's as little people there as possible. And with me, Thomasin McKenzie's reached that point where it's like, anything you're in, I'm going to see it opening night. Like, I want to be there. And I thought she really delivered, and I thought Edgar Wright really delivered something really special with this. It's one of my favorite movies of the year so far. I hope word of mouth is good enough that more people catch wind of it and go to see it because it deserves to be successful because it's so well crafted. I give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Dusk?
Once again, why don't you just take my job?
Sorry to keep doing this, man.
No, that's good. That's good. That means it's okay. I've made a worthy successor. I can't really add too much. What else? The only thing I'll add is I do think the ending is a little bit messier than I think you're mentioning. But against everything else that the movie does well, against everything else that it does, and the soundtrack, from the acting, the performances, I think Edgar Wright and the cinematography do just enough where it makes up for some of the poor elements later. I'm kind of caught. I'm caught between a 7 and an 8, and I don't know quite what I get. But I think because of the presentation and because of everything else that kind of leads to it, and it didn't fumble too hard. If it had fumbled a little bit more, I think I would have given it a 7. But I liked it just enough. I'm gonna go with Chris. I'm gonna give it an 8.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we're gonna get into spoilers here, Nick. We're gonna do that. I'm gonna give you a thumbs up when we're done, and everything like that. So there we go. So here's spoilers. So just to let everybody know, we're doing spoiler talk. This is spoilers. We're doing that Okay, so
all the time.
Yep. So here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're gonna be coming back in about. We're gonna do probably 10 minutes talking spoilers. So there we go. We're gonna be doing that about 10 minutes. So the spoiler is okay. So like I said, Thomasin McKenzie character, she has an ability, that gets kind of introduced in the beginning of the film because she can communicate like with her dead mother. So she kind of has this, kind of special talk, like almost kind of like, I guess if you had to compare it to an ability, like maybe like Christopher Walken it from the Dead Zone, or someone like maybe Jack Torrance from The Shining, or someone like that.
Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense.
Yeah. Kind of like some ability, kind of like that. So she, goes off to the city, goes to fashion school, does all that, right? Hates her roommate, then moves out, then goes into this, then moves into kind of this little apartment. And the landlord lady, that is the one that's played by Diana Rigg. Diana Rigg. That's the one that's played by her. So when she moves into this new apartment, that's when she starts having these kind of trips to the 60s. So when I thought about it, I was like, okay, so it's the spirit that's communicating with her, because like I said, it's a murder mystery. And, her trying to, like live through this life of Anna Taylor-Joy. So she was the one that was murdered by the Matt Smith character. Supposedly, that's what what we see. And then it's, kind of her communicating through her in a way for her to, see what her life was like, and then for her to solve the mystery. But it turns out that Anna Taylor-Joy's character was not the one that was murdered. She was about to be murdered by the Matt Smith character, who in the movie that, you think from looking at the trailer, you think it's Terrence Stamp, because of course it's Terrence Stamp. Of course he killed somebody. He's Zod. Okay, of course.
Look, man, Terrence Stamp is in the movie. That's just nothing. That's nothing enough to be said. That's just what it is.
So they basically use Terrence Stamp as like a huge red herring because, throughout the whole movie, he's like just basically almost stalking her, almost, constantly following her, picking up her stuff. He runs into her like everywhere she goes in town. He just constantly runs into her, and it's like, okay, so
the gray-haired gentleman.
Yeah, so you constantly think like, oh, so it just, he's just a big red herring to make you think like, oh, he's the one that's the older Matt Smith character, and he's the one that killed her. But in reality, so what happened, the big twist is that, so Anna Taylor-Joy, Sandy, she didn't die. She was about to be, but she, got the knife and she killed Matt Smith. And then after she killed him, she realized like, well, hey, this killing thing is pretty fun. Okay, I'm gonna kill some more people. So she basically became like a serial killer. Because what happens was, what happens when a young girl, a young person goes, it's like, I want to be in the big city and I want to have my name in the headlights and on the banner and I want to be the big star. What happens? They get into porn. They get sold into sex work, something like that happens. And that's what happens with Anna Taylor-Joy's character, Matt Smith. He seems like this cool guy that's going to help her with her music career. But in actuality, no, he was a pimp and he pimped her out. When she refused to stop working for him, that's when he tried to kill her, and that's when she turned the tables on him. And then that's when she kind of became a serial killer, killing all these different Johns, basically, that were coming to have sex with her, that she trapped, and she slit their throats, stabbed them to death. And then
I would like to point out that a lot of those Johns that she kills, almost all of them were ones that he basically forced her to have sex with.
Okay, they weren't new people. They were ones that were.
There were some new, but a lot of them were previous Johns that he had, like middle-aged men that she had asked him to sleep with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we see a lot of them coming up to her at a nightclub in one scene.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
A lot of them are the previous characters in which he told her to sleep with, and she's just like getting revenge on them. It's like this movie suddenly becomes I Spit on Your Grave for like 10 minutes.
Okay. So she basically, got the revenge there and then hid the bodies like in the house, like under the floorboards and, and all that other stuff. So that's the big, and then Sandy, so like we said, she didn't get killed. And it turns out the Sandy character is actually the Diana Rigg character, the landlord lady that owns the house, that owns the property that, she's renting the room out of. So that's kind of like the big twist there that happened. So what confused me is, one, she has the picture of herself on the wall in her place, which is like, okay, like I think there was a scene prior to that where Ellie did go into her room. It's like, okay, this is this big picture on the wall. You never saw that, like, you know what I mean? But okay, I guess okay, she didn't see that until now. Okay, I guess I can excuse that. That's whatever. But also, it's that again, like we said, with her ability of communicating with the dead people, like because the Johns are the ones that are, you think they're the ones trying to kill her. No, they're trying to communicate with her, like, hey, avenge us. You know what I mean? Hey, help us because she's the one to kill her. And it's funny when that happened because like when the ghosts like actually say like, hey, try to help her, she's just like, nah, I'm good. Nah, you kind of deserved it. I'm sticking with the woman. You kind of
I appreciated. I greatly appreciated that moment where it's just like, nah, dude, you guys like, you deserve what you got.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's what I was referring to earlier, where I was like, oh, is he going to screw up this whole thing about like showing how horrible the exploitation of women was in the '60s? Like, if him and his co-writer, who we haven't mentioned yet, Christy Wilson Cairns, I think is her name, who wrote 1917 and Petty Dreadful before this. Yeah, if they had written it to where she was like, okay, I'm going to help you, I'm going to avenge you, I'm going to kill her, then it's sort of like, no, you just blew this whole thing. Like, you were walking this tightrope so well, and you just fucking tripped and fell. But the fact that they had her say, no, fuck you, you deserved it, I was like, okay, thank you. You're staying consistent. That's
Yeah,
good.
and then the only reason all this works out is literally just by happenstance. It's just like, okay, all right, things are just kind of falling apart. Just get out of here. And so, like, by happenstance, it saves those spirits too.
yeah, yeah. So yeah. So that's kind of like the big thing that happened, the big twist there that kind of happened. So yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. She was just like, yeah, nah, I'm good. Like I'm good. I kind of, yeah, I was like, I'm gonna stick with the woman. She kind of was right in the way. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, she's kind of right.
I'm not gonna go to jail for avenging the wrongs that were done to me.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was kind of funny there. But yeah. So the thing was that kind of confused me was one, the whole thing with her ability of being able to communicate. So I got the Johns were trying to talk to her, but why would she see the murder of Anna Taylor-Joy if they were trying to convince her to convince her to, kind of be on their side. So why would she see that instead of seeing what actually happened? So I was kind of confused about that. And I guess kind of that's what kind of big thing that kind of tripped me up. So what do you think about that?
You bring up an interesting point. The best I can figure is that she's probably never had like this much of an interaction with supernatural forces beforehand. Before, like when she just lived at home with her grandma, the only real interactions we know of that she had in terms of like interacting with dead people was her mom. And her mom wasn't malevolent. She wasn't like trying to convince her of something or tell her of something. And it was a pretty light presence. It's usually just her looking at from a mirror like, hi, how are you doing? I'm glad you're okay. Whereas with this, it's like so much of it is coming at her all at once. And so she's probably never had to deal with that before. So she's trying to process it all at once. And as a result, she may be getting some details scrambled, like particularly the murder. Like she could be getting mixed up just because she's never had to deal with this much of this particular thing before, so she can't process everything correctly.
Okay. Dusk, what do you think about that?
That's a nice explanation, but I'm on like you mentioned earlier, the movie Dead Zone. I think that's a great example. Thing about Dead Zone is you need to really establish powers immediately. Dead Zone's very clear. Hey, I touch you, I can see a potential future of your death, or I can see something happening, or something happened to someone that could potentially lead to their death. When I see a body, oh, I know what happened to them. I know like that. He has a very set limit on exactly what he can do and exactly what is his powers. You know what they're doing. We don't really get that here. It's kind of all over the place. Because really, if you break it down, yeah, you're right. Why would these spirits show her an opposite vision of what they would actually want her to see? It's almost as if they wrote a movie and they needed that to happen in order for the movie to do the movie.
Yeah.
So,
and then
that's kind of a plot hole in the fact that they don't really explain what you can do. Even the communications between the spirits are kind of it's not very super great. There was a movie called Blue Velvet. Sorry, not Blue Velvet. That's a different movie. That's a David Lynch movie. There's another movie where it's a Mexican one where he could see spirits too, but they would like look like really kind of creepy and on the ceiling and anywhere he could see. It seems like what her ability could do was both limited, but also she could just see spirits and get spooked. If not, but she could only really communicate with people if she saw them through a mirror as well. You're just kind of like, one or the other, man. Pick something.
Yeah, and I was also kind of like confused by the fact, like we said, they show us that she can communicate with the dead, but the Anna Taylor-Joy character, the whole reason
she never died.
She never died. So I was like, why? So why is she living through her if she never died? Like, why does she get to like somehow, you know what I mean? Like, you know, kind of vicariously or just be her in this other timeline and this. So I was like, I was kind of confused on that. And then
she apparently can feel what Sandy felt, because in the very first scene, like when she wakes up, she has a hickey on her neck that Jack had left her. I'm like, oh shit, are we gonna go into like real dark territory where she could feel every horrible thing that's gonna happen to Sandy's character?
Yeah.
And aside from a few other things, they really don't. Like, so you're like, okay, so why'd you even bring that up?
Yeah, that was kind of, because I was like, when it gets into the dark reveal of what was happening to the Sandy character, if she was being pimped out, it's like, it seems like she can run away and go into like another period of her life where that didn't happen, like fast forward. So like, okay, is she experiencing that? I don't really know. So that was kind of, I thought kind of confusing when they introduced the whole hickey thing. I was like, oh, so so if it'd be a situation,
there's a danger.
Yeah, it's like a danger there. So I was like, so, you know, so that didn't really come into play all that much, I thought, either. And then so I was kind of confused by that of like, why is she living through the Anna Taylor-Joy character? She never died, so how can she go to the 60s and like what was kind of happening there?
So it would have been interesting though, and I don't know if they set that up, but I would have forgiven it if the reason she was having the dreams was in a really fucked up way. She was experiencing the life through Jack. Like if one of the bodies was like Jack and it was in her room, then that would make sense. Oh, I think I'm experiencing from Sandy's point of view. But no, I'm actually experiencing through Jack. At least in that way, you could maybe kind of explain where Jack's kind of being like, no, I was the one who committed this. I didn't want to do that. That's his own ego going in his own head. And the other spirits are trying to pull that away because that's not the truth. But nah. The way it is kind of, you're like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Chris, what did you think about that, kind
of? You do raise a good point. They do say that, like, Sandy died, Diana Rigg does say, like, Sandy did die that day and a new person was born, but yeah, that's still, like, a little bit of a stretch.
That's more like
that's a metaphorical death.
Yeah.
Metaphorical, exactly.
So my spirit powers don't work on metaphors.
Yeah, you do raise a good point with that. My big question that I alluded to earlier is, so they mention Diana Rigg tells her when she first gets there that they live next to this Frenchy restaurant. I forget what they're called. French something.
Cafe Paris.
Not Cafe de Paris. It's some place where they make garlic all the time, and she says, you live here long enough, all you're ever going to smell is garlic. And I raise you a question, guys. Do you think the overwhelming smell of garlic is enough to overcome the overwhelming smell of decomposing dead bodies buried in the walls and underneath the floorboards?
See, that would have been cool. And that's something Edgar Wright, I could totally see him putting that in as something, a little detail. That would have been a really nice detail.
Yeah.
It's too bad that's never alluded to again.
Yeah, it's implied that that's why nobody ever figured out that, oh, she's hiding dead bodies here, but still, it's like, I don't know if that would quite happen that way. I think the smell of rotting corpses would smell far stronger than even the best garlic in the entire world.
Right. So not to put my real life in the way of things, but as someone who has smelled necrotic flesh before because of my job, or at least what I've had to do for criminology and having to be in at morgues, you don't forget that smell. Nothing is going to, very few things are going to overpower the smell of a corpse. That's an instinctual smell. It is like a snap of my fingers. You're going to immediately go, oh shit, something died here.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much. It's just all at that point you're just gonna be like, why did someone put garlic on a corpse?
Right.
That's basically what you're gonna smell.
Yeah.
But that's a nice try.
I was not expecting anyone here to have actual experience with dead bodies. Thank you for telling me that.
No, it's okay. It's just I had to learn about that stuff when I was studying criminology in order to get into the field I was going after, and I had to look at morgue stuff, and you as soon as you smell it, you know what it is. So I've had personal experience, ever so briefly, but at least being like, yep, that's what it smells like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like smelling gasoline. You know what it is.
Yeah. So was it that she just got her revenge of killing those dudes and that was it, or did she kind of continue through?
So they're very vague on that. That's also another thing I wanted to bring up. That would have actually presented real danger, is that she was still a dangerously unhinged individual. But it seemed like after she was kind of done with that, she's like, okay, and I'm done. But you broke my rule, so I'm gonna kill. So even you know the truth now, and I must kill. Like, why does she care? Like, it's been years and years and later, she's been hiding it, and she can clearly, like, she kind of has a little bit of a bond with Ellie. You're like, all right, kid, just take care of yourself, okay?
Yeah.
Don't end up like me. Like, Ellie's not gonna tell anybody.
Right.
She admires Sandy. Why would she like tell? There's really no reason to.
Right.
Nor to stab John.
Yeah.
Like even the whole like poisoning, like you know too much. I'm like, what?
Yeah. I thought that was a little wild because I was just kind of like, okay, so the whole thing of like, well, the police came to my door, but they don't believe you anyway because they think you're nuts. So it's like, okay, well, seems like it's good there. Anyway.
Also, what was the point of them alleging that, oh, no one in the police department believes them, which is a little BS. But at least there was like one woman at the department's like, I'll look into it. And you're like, but that never goes anything back to that.
Well, I mean, there's nothing to look into.
Kind of, sort of.
I mean, there's nothing to look into because nobody ever died. Sandy never died.
True, but I was hoping that was going to lead to something. That was going to be an investigation, or we might have a hot fuzz moment where like, oh my god, they found like the policewoman tied up, and Ellie's like, oh no, you can't do this. That would have given a reason. Oh no, there's like a person that was trying to investigate this, and then she's like, oh, she could be dying. I gotta help out.
Yeah. The poisoning thing, I was just like, I don't know. That
also would have been a nice. That also would have been a nice little twist if she did that thing to the police cop who was trying to solve the murders. It's like, look at what you've become. You're causing violence towards women as a woman. Look what they've made you into. And then she's like, oh no, I've become the very thing I hate. What have I become?
Yeah, did you all kind of piece it together, kind of the mystery a little bit, or no?
A little bit for me. Like I had a feeling that Terrence Stamp wasn't going to turn out to be Matt Smith when Sam Claflin, who most of you may know from Hunger Games as Finnick, when he has his little cameo in the nightclub as the cop, because I looked at him and was like, huh, he kind of looks a little like a young Terrence Stamp, more so than Matt Smith. It's like, wait a minute, is that what they're going to do? And then later on they do it. Oh, that wasn't Matt Smith's character. That was this other guy.
Yeah.
So that part I figured out, but the rest of it, no. I bought the Sandy had died, hook, line, and sinker.
I was on I didn't believe that he was going to be the red herring. I believe that. But I also, knowing Edgar Wright from the movies I've seen, I'm like, nah, it's a little too obvious. There's got to be a twist here. It's just unfortunate that the twist I got was like, I felt was like sloppy, and I'm like,
yeah,
that doesn't seem like what you would do, Edgar. I'm surprised. You're way more clever with that.
Yeah, it just feels like it's like, yeah, kind of like I said, when you're doing a murder mystery, the ending, the conclusion,
you gotta nail it.
It's got to be really good, and not just something that it just feels like just comes out of nowhere. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
it just feels like that.
You
just
gotta
kind
put
of, yeah.
The best murder mysteries are you can figure it out along with the audience. And I was looking at all the clues and trying to pay attention to it. I'm trying to put together. And what I thought was going to happen, or at least what I thought was going to be, kind of sort of came true, but it was like in a way that I was like, there's no way that I didn't even think they were going to do something like that where it's because that didn't make any sense based on the things you've given us.
Yeah. I mean, if you just, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess, last word on this, and we're going to wrap it up.
Absolutely.
But I guess if you just not had it where it was purely through Ellie going through Sandy's experience, where she was more of an outsider, more of like she was able to like look in
the whole event.
Yeah. So it wasn't like just strictly from her POV. So it's like when you're going through there, it's like, okay, now we can see like maybe the big twist is it was Jack, this guy, the one that was toying with her, the spirit, and making her, kind of see these things in different events. And so, make it look one way and everything like that, and all these other ghosts and all this other stuff. Maybe. I don't know.
That's actually a great way of just making this fit a lot better, and especially if she's sitting on a pile of bodies inside of a building, just having a whole perspective. It's just this location and this area and the individuals in it. It can be like, oh, and their memories of who the Sandy person is, and then when that twist comes, you're like, oh, I never died, and I've been like the serial killer. You're like, oh, like then this all led up to this. Then it'd be like, oh, girl, you're in real danger. You've been sleeping on like what she's done.
Yeah.
Then I'd be like, oh, okay. Then that's way more tension.
Yeah.
And it would also tie back into the theme of the you don't know. He's like, you think you love something, like, oh, Sandy's so cool. She's such a cool woman, whatever. And then like, oh, it's not quite what you think.
Yeah. Jesus. Oh man. But yeah. Chris, any last words on it, man?
No, I feel like I've said everything I need to say.
Okay. All right. Let me get Nick back here real quick. Let me take. Yeah, but yeah, but I still liked it a lot. And everything like I
never said I disliked it.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah, I still enjoyed it. I still really enjoyed it, even though the ending was kind of there. And then also I didn't understand the point of him being hit by a car. I didn't get that.
I was like, what?
I didn't understand the point of that, but okay.
Like, sure, okay.
Yeah, but I didn't get that.